I will just call the meeting of the Port of Newport's Commercial Fishing Users Group Committee to order. It's 9:08 a.m. on Friday, January 8th. My name's Heather Mann. I am the chair of the committee. Can't quite remember if I'm a Midwater Trawl representative or what I am on the committee, but for those people who might be watching, we have a few other committee members that are here. I think it'd be really, for people that are watching, if we just everybody introduce themselves. And so I don't know if everybody's looking at the same screen that I'm looking at, but I'll just say Karen Hewitt is commission staff, and then Mike Pettis, do you want to go next?
Okay, I guess I don't for sure know who I'm representing.
You are Midwater Trawl, Heather.
Okay.
Mike, you are Port Dock 5 Moorage.
Okay, the reason for my confusion is that I have boats both on Port Dock 5 and Port Dock 7 and have had for years. So
yep.
Mike Pettis, commercial fisherman in the area for 40 plus years. And like I said, I have a small boat on Dock 7 and a couple of boats on Dock 5.
Aaron?
Aaron Bretz, I'm the Director of Operations at the Port of Newport.
Kent? Or Kent?
Commercial Marina Harbor Master.
Kelly?
Port Commissioner.
Paula? You're muted.
Sorry. I'm Paula Miranda, the Port of Newport General Manager.
David Jinks?
David Jinks, Terminal Representative for Midwater Trawl.
Don?
Don Moon, NIT Supervisor.
Mark?
Mark Brown, Director of Finance and Business Services for the Port.
Kevin?
I'm Kevin Christensen. I work with HDR Engineering, and we are representing the Port as the construction management group during the Dock 5 construction.
Thanks. Jim?
Jim Burke, Port of Newport Commissioner.
And Angela? If you're speaking, Angela, you're muted. So Angela Nebel is the handles the PR for the port. And so before we get started on the agenda, I just wanted to take a moment to express my deepest condolences regarding the passing of Steve Beck. Steve was a good friend to the port. He was a commissioner, but also in the time that I knew him, which was only through the port, he really was a friend to the commercial fishing industry. He took it upon himself to really learn as much as he could about the challenges and successes that we face, and make sure that we are able to thrive in the Port of Newport. I think he recognized how special the port was in terms of the diversity of commercial folks here and boats and activity, and how important it was, not just to Newport and Lincoln County, but to the state of Oregon and really the nation. And so I was really shocked and sad to hear of his sudden passing, and just would pass on my condolences to his wife, Susan, and just really wanted to take a moment to express that. In terms of the agenda, everybody should have that. And I don't know that we have any changes to the agenda. If anybody has anything they'd like to see different, we won't approve the minutes since we don't have a quorum. We'll get a quick financial update from Mark Brown, and then we'll spend the bulk of the time, I think, talking about Port Dock 5 and the construction project, and then spend a little bit of time getting an update on the electrical system upgrades, and then the planning for Port Dock 7 replacement. Karen, is there any, well, before I say that, is there any changes to the agenda? Anything that anybody else wants to see or? Okay, and Karen, is there any public comment?
No public comment was submitted.
Okay. So we'll skip over 4, which is approve the minutes, and we'll move right into 5 with Mark with a financial update of the Port of Newport. Thanks, Mark.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'll be real quick because Port Doc 5 is really critical. The report really stands on its own. We are behind last year a bit as of November 30th. Some of this is due to some large expenses we've incurred, primarily fixing the sinkhole over in South Beach. As far as we compare to budget, we're ahead of budget. So that's a good thing. We're in a good cash position, and I think I'm going to be forecasting forward to see where we'll be at, because we're going to be putting a bit of money into Port Doc 5 here shortly. I've also included our accounts receivable list for you as far as where we're at in comparison to previous years. Our goal on those is to work with the commercial fishermen to get them to be able to pay what they owe. It's not, we don't want to take their boats. But as if you check out the minutes for all of our commission meetings, you will find our financials in every one of those meetings, as well as how we're doing accounts receivable wise. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for that. And so I have been following the commission meetings, and I think you've made some progress in getting those folks that had not been paying to pay, is my understanding from those meetings. And I appreciate that you've been able to do that. Is some of the shortfall due to COVID this year, or is, just a sec, Paula, or are we, because, fishermen have been deemed essential workers and continued to produce all through 2019 for the most part, although facing several COVID-19 challenges. But I know in South Beach, you maybe didn't have the camping and the other stuff that might have happened for a while.
No, if you look at the commercial budget, it's ahead of budget. The revenues are down a bit, but I think COVID had very little impact on the port. It could be attributing to some slower than usual payments, because some people haven't been able to get out. But the research that I've done shows that at least in the recreational side, people do more fishing and more recreational things when they can't go out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
No, largely unaffected.
Paula, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just want, I want to have Mark highlight a little bit of the electrical work that we're doing on Port Doc 3 and 5S to the amounts that we have been putting aside for it, and the fact that we have created an account for, and we actually been putting more funds into it than was originally agreed with the commercial fishermen. So Mark, if you don't mind just highlighting a little bit of that, that'll be great.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. What I've done, we have several different funds in the port. One of them is a fund that's really for these large capital projects. And I've had our accounting supervisor set up a specific account, which is electrical work, where we put funds aside for the electrical upgrade. To date, we put about $138,000 aside for the electrical work. And what I'm doing is calculating what I would have expected with like a 3% raise versus the raise that actually occurred, and putting that in the account, so we have the money to do that project.
So if I remember correctly, Aaron, you had come in front of us at one point, talked about increasing some fees that were specifically directed toward this electrical work. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The plan was to, it was over a 3-year time span, raise mortgage rates so that we could take the difference in the incremental revenue and set that aside, and then in year 3, which is next year, be able to get replace the pedestals and upgrade the docks to 50 amp service. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. I just was working a little bit with our engineer yesterday on the load sheets that he gave to PUD. So.
And I think at the time there had been a little bit of concern about making sure that those additional funds that were being collected from fishermen were going directly to this project. And I think what I'm hearing from Paula and from Mark is that's exactly what's happened. And you've been able to put even some additional money into that fund.
That is correct.
Great. That's good. That's good news. And I think people will be happy to hear that. Anything else? Any questions that anybody has for Mark on the finances? Okay, why don't we keep on moving then? Aaron, do you want to take it away and talk about Port Dock 5?
Sure, I provided a short report in here. The long story short here is that this is the first time in a few months I've had really anything to update people on because we were down to the questions that would be asked about the project would be answered by the contractor submittals. So we recently just selected a contractor, and we're in the process right now. In the coming week, we should be starting to see the submittals coming in that they have to give to us on the project so that we can keep it moving ahead. We're on a really tight time schedule due to the in-water work period. The in-water work period goes from the 1st of November to the 14th of February. We got pushed back quite a ways this year because along the way we have to meet a bunch of benchmarks to continue our qualification for the federal grant that we received from the EDA. So that slowed down when we could put the project out to bid because there's a litany of things that we have to do or we had to do prior to putting the project out to bid. We didn't want to just sit back and say, we'll get to it next year as far as the actual construction work goes. So as soon as we got everything done that the EDA wanted us to, we went ahead and put the project out to bid. I think we have enough flexibility in the contract and the bid documents. I know we have enough flexibility in the bid documents to be able to get in a worst case scenario. See, we've requested an extension to this year's in-water work window. And if that gets granted as we've requested it, we'll be able to get all the in-water work done prior to the 5th of March. And then the construction project above the water will continue and will be completed early May. So, but that's contingent upon this request being approved. And if it does not get approved, then what we'll do is we'll have to get all of the submittals and the work done that we can out of the water this spring, and then immediately in the fall start doing the in-water work next year. We were a little bit optimistic about all this because generally, I mean, it's not unusual yet, but you know, we were hoping that the fishing season would be underway by now, but it's not quite there. So, you know, I'm a little bit anxious about that, you know, because it would be, you know, you guys know what it takes to get going and fishing. There's a lot of trips that are going to happen right there at the beginning to get the gear in the water, and so there's a potential for congestion at the dock and things like that. However, we don't anticipate. I mean, there's going to be some minor difficulties possibly when we switch over to the temporary structure and we put the gangway in. There will probably be some interruption to the normal flow of things, but other than that, the temporary structure looks different than the regular pier, but in function it's basically the same. It's supposed to accommodate, or it will accommodate, you know, cart traffic and foot traffic, but we can't drive out the pier right now as it is anyway. We're trying to get that fixed. So that's the bulk of it. The in-water, so we're in a period right now of a bunch of, we're working with we just got the contract signed, and we're working to get the submittals taken care of. Around the 25th would be when the actual in-water construction period would be. I think they've got about 5 days set aside to build this, to put the pilings in for the temporary structure, and keep moving from there. But we're not, we wouldn't be without service on the pier for 5 days or anything like that. It's they build it, and then they cut, the idea is that they cut over traffic to that temporary structure as soon as it's up. I just talked to Steve Carver for quite a while yesterday. Passing over the utilities will be another challenge that we face. We're going to need to move the fuel lines. And so obviously that's going to be a challenge to make sure that gets predicted and gets communicated to everybody. He said he's going to make sure that South Beach obviously is open during that time period. Obviously not everybody can get in there due to draft, but he's going to make sure that he's got that staffed. We could also possibly come up with some other alternatives for fueling as well, if we need to. Some of this stuff may not really be an issue when it comes down to it, but because it really does depend on some of these details that we're going to work out next week with a contractor. But I wanted to get an opportunity to at least let you guys know why we're trying to do this right now. We have to do it during the in-water work window. We don't have any choice. If I had my druthers, I'd rather do this thing in like September and October, but we don't really have that choice. So that's why we have to do it right now. And there's probably going to be some things that we haven't thought of, and that's the main purpose here. Is we're trying to open up any blind spots that we might have that we're not aware of that could come up, so that we can get out in front of it.
In terms of the just a sec, Mike, in terms of the fueling, I know that the vessels that are up at the terminal, they have fuel trucks coming in and doing fuel up there. I think, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We get fuel deliveries
as well for the larger boats that can't get over to South Beach, if there is a disruption.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was, one of the things that I figured. But again, we will figure out with the contractor next week, kind of what they think might be for outages when they pass that over. I don't think it's going to be a lengthy time period. I don't think it's going to go 5 days or anything like that. We'll just have to wait and see though exactly what they come back with.
Mike.
Yeah, Aaron, that was exactly my question as to how long you think these periods of not being able to fuel at Dock 5 might be. There are several boats that can't get into dock, the South Beach Marina, and depending on how many boats are tied there at the terminal, it might be limited space there as well. It's just one thing I think we're going to have to deal with this year is we have a large influx of out of town effort from other crab ports, and in periods of nice weather, everybody's going to be fishing. And then when the weather gets less optimal, people are going to be running in and they're going to want to be getting bait and fuel and things like that. And everybody's going to want to get it all at once. So it's really going to be important that we keep that downtime at Dock 5 to a minimum. I know you guys will do your best.
Yeah, we went up underneath the pier with the contractor here a few days ago. I think one of the things that we have going for us is that the way that those lines are mounted underneath the existing pier is not terribly sophisticated. So I think it's gonna, aside from length itself, it's gonna be pretty easy to move things about. And I just got a call from them the other day, and I think one of the things they're suggesting is that we just move it over once and leave it and not move it back. That way, again, it reduces the outages. But that's one of our big concerns.
So, Aaron, can you just talk a little bit about what the actual, maybe this is something for Kevin, but what the actual process is? Because I know you're committed to reducing disruption as much as possible. I guess I have a hard time understanding the fundamentals of what is going to happen. And so they're going to put in a temporary structure and then close the main walkway across to Port Dock 5 and rebuild that? Is that?
That's the general concept, yeah. The temporary structure will go alongside the pier. It'll consist of permanent pilings that will be there, that'll be driven, that we can use. Yes, and then the foot traffic will be diverted to that temporary structure while they disassemble the existing one and build out the rest of it using their proposal has been a tracked crane. I think we're still due to get their access plan in the coming days. Is that right, Kevin?
Yes, that's correct. We're waiting. We'll get a detailed plan, if not today, early next week, and we'll start working on some of the details of their plan and how they plan to keep the flow of pedestrians and fishermen back and forth on that dock while they're under construction. So yes.
But yeah, this is something that's has been reiterated throughout the process from the bid documents to the contract documents and throughout the meetings that we've had, is that we have to maintain access throughout the project. That's just the way it has to be. So
Is there are there any dock moorage spaces that are going to be impacted by this?
Not currently. It's possible that later towards, so part of the project is the landing float down there where the gangway comes down to the dock. They're going to have to replace that toward the end of it, I believe. During that time period, and this will be a little ways out. I think it takes several months to even just have those built. So I don't know what that's going to look like when they bring it in. Again, this will be something where they're going to take out the existing float and put the new one in as quickly as they can. But there may be a time period during that time that that there's going to be some access troubles. I don't know exactly what that process is going to look like right now, but I don't see any other slip. There's no slips that are going to be taken out of service or anything like that.
Aaron, if I might add, if there is when there is some disruption, we'll try to give some advance notice as well with the contractor to let the port know as well ahead of time. Hey, it's going to be interrupted for 24 hours or something like that while they're making the switch or however long. We'll try to make sure that there's notification so that there's no surprises more than anything.
Yeah, and these are the type of interruptions that we're expecting would be short ones like that. That's the whole point of doing it like this, is to try and get those because we know how important the facility is to everybody. So
a couple questions. In your report, Aaron, you talk about kicking off the work on January 25th. Is there a weather dependency issue there, or is that happening regardless?
Well, I think so for these guys, they're doing less of the work by barge than what was originally what we kind of figured would happen. They're going to build out as they go for some of this stuff. So I think they're going to be able to work through the weather a little bit easier than if everything was 100% on the barge. Plus, the real challenge with barge for everything is that you can only really work, especially up near the shoreline. You can only get in there on the higher tides, and so when you combine weather with tides, and then on top of that, the restrictions in the city code for noise, basically for pile driving, the window to get that work done gets whittled down to like just a couple of days, and it's impossible. So that's generally the way that that's going to kind of look. So,
and then if you don't get the extension, do you still do as much work as you can in the time that you have?
Yeah, if it comes down to that, I think we would prefer to get all these submittals taken care of that need to get done. This is things like plan the actual engine, because they have to do some plan work on the temporary structure. They have to do some plan work on the gangway itself, the float. They've got to so they're in the process of having to get a right of way permit from the city, which should only take a couple of days. But in any case, that's another submittal they've got to do. And then they've got to do some fabricating. So we'll certainly look at getting all that stuff done so that when November 1st rolls around, they can start right away. The unfortunate aspect of that is that, again, I don't know what the next crab season is going to look like. So, you know, it's I don't know. It's unfortunate that the in-water work window happens this time of year. But that's just the challenge I think we're up against one way or the other.
So yeah, and starting in November, it's not just the crab season. You've got all the larger boats at the terminal, like right now, getting ready for Alaska. You know, it's helpful that they'll mostly be leaving this weekend to head up north. And so that will make some space up at the terminal, theoretically, or actually. And so I think that's good. My last question I have right now is around actually the street. So how much of the fisherman's parking and how much of the street and the dock right there is going to be impacted by this? Are they going to be staging or cut off there?
Yeah, they're not allowed to use the street for staging. They're not using any of those areas right near the dock for staging. They're going to be staging everything as much as possible out at the terminal where we got a lot more space, and then they'll move it down either by barge or you know, small barge, or by vehicle when possible. But we can't really block the street off. You know, it's too busy down there for us to, you know, turn people away from using the street access or anything like that. So you know, other than the city has asked that we divert passing pedestrian traffic out to the sidewalk. If you can imagine, there's there's the pier, then to the boardwalk, and then there's a sidewalk outside of that. So that pedestrian traffic may be diverted to the sidewalk, but we're not even allowed to route it to the other side of the street. So that's how they're going to have to do this. So we've still got, like I said, more details we have to work out, but we're just we're moving as quickly as we can.
Aaron, one more thing to bring up is on the streets. There may be times that the contractor brings in equipment real early in the morning or something. They will be unloading in the street to get it over by the pier, but just it'd be very, you know, a half hour here or there, but they'll have flagging and get people around. But they would do that in early in the morning when it's not quite so busy. Like they wouldn't do it like at 9 o'clock in the morning or something. They do it much earlier than that type of thing. Just so you're aware that there may be times when they have to unload equipment in the street.
And I think the other side of that too is I've been doing the best I can to relate to everybody involved, kind of the schedules of, especially for fishermen that are going fishing. They and every meeting that we have, I reiterate, I'm like, you know, the hours of the day don't matter as much as the tide conditions and the weather. So that's what drives the traffic going out to the docks. You know, if it's 3 in the morning and you got a favorable tide and it's like 10 feet out and it's supposed to build to, you know, 20 tomorrow or 18 or whatever, they're gonna get out, they're gonna go, and so you'll see a lot of traffic at 3 in the morning. And so I think we're gonna be able, and I have enough experience to kind of be able to look at the forecasts. I know what weather windows look like and when people will start, you know, if they're fishing because prices are good and the season's good. I can at least predict when I think we're gonna have traffic, and I'm pretty decent at it, so I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that, because as soon as Kevin said, you know, when it's not so busy, it's not so busy for maybe the tourists, but you know, for fishermen, it can be. Another thing that might impact that is, you know, if you're fishing groundfish, you have to pay for an observer starting at on a 24-hour scale, and so a lot of times people will leave at midnight because of that cost. So, you know, there's a couple of different things that play into when fishermen are leaving, and I'm really glad to hear, Aaron, you're on top of that. Do people have other questions? You know, Aaron, what is the specific feedback? I think it'd be really helpful if you had any actual questions that you want feedback that, you know, David, and I see Carrie's joined us, and Mike can provide And then for people that are watching the video, if there's specific questions that you want input or feedback on that's helpful to you.
So these are let me run out kind of what my concerns are, and then my main question would be, what have I forgotten or what are we not thinking of? If if we have to start the project right at the time period when everybody just starts fishing, there's going to be a lot of, or at least when they can drop gear, there's going to be a lot of trips continually revolving through. A lot of people are going to be needing to get fuel during that time period. And we need to make sure that, especially at that time period, at the beginning of the season, that the access is open. I don't know that we're going to have enough time really to pass for things to slow down too much at this point, because it's already the 8th. And if they're still working on prices, and it doesn't look like they're fishing any time in the immediate future, then this project will probably be ongoing around a time when the season's still busy. And if that's the case, if we do need to move fuel over, like I said, one idea would be to get the larger boats possibly in and out the terminal, and the smaller boats be able to go over to South Beach. But like I said, the outages that we're talking about are not, they're not lengthy as far as access to the dock goes. So we should be able to find ways to get people the access that they need to their boats, and or let everybody know, hey, tomorrow during the hours of such and such and such and such, we're moving a gangway in, and it may be a challenge getting down to the boat when you need to. Those are the problems that I kind of foresee. Are there getting groceries down to the dock might be one of those things that I thought of too. But is there any other stuff that you can think of that we really need to watch out for?
Quick question. Just a second, Mike, quick question, Aaron, how are you going to broadcast the information 24 hours in advance? Are you Facebook but not a lot of fishermen aren't on there. Like, what's your plan?
Yeah, so using our social media page and our web page would be two obvious reasons. Another one was the bulletin boards going down to the docks, putting some really conspicuous notices there. And then another idea that I had would be to work with the local radio stations and see if we can get some notices out on the radio. Those were the ideas that I had.
Mm-hmm. I think another couple of ideas would be to alert the processors to hang something up.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how much fishermen are going in and out of the processing plants right now because of COVID, but if there was a way to do that, that might be helpful. And then also to alert all of us on the Commercial Fishing Users Committee that can then, like I have a very large mailing list, email list that I send notices out to. And I'm sure there potentially are others that do as well. And maybe Newport Fishermen's Wives would be one to get that information out. So we could work with you to help make sure there's maybe overly, I think it's better to over communicate than under communicate. So we could really blanket folks with that information. Mike, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. If it did come to pass that there was interruption in the ability for fishermen to access their vessels during a time when, a lot was happening and there was great need, I don't know how practical it would be, but the possibility might be there. I know that the port has that Boston whaler type skiff. They might even be able to do some limited ferrying from other docks to people's boats if they really needed to get there in some sort of a desperate need. I don't know if that's a possibility, if that's too much liability involved or whatever, but anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out.
There's a lot of liability there, but that was one of the things that when it comes down to it, if there's something going on that we got to find a way to get access. And that's it was something I considered we're trying to prevent that from having to actually even be considered, but But I definitely have thought about a lot of different scenarios. I think that's one of the ones I've considered too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your commitment to trying to be make it as least disruptive as possible. But I think as we've seen in the last couple of days, even the best laid plans,
Oh yeah,
don't always work. So it's really good to have backup B and C plans. I think so.
Yeah, the best laid plans of mice and men go often awry.
Yeah. So David, Jinx, or Carrie, did you guys want to provide any feedback or have any questions at this point?
Heather, I really don't have anything. I think it's being covered really well. And I'm not a Port Doc 5 user, but I do think that moving the fuel lines one time is a positive approach and not going back and forth.
Okay. Carrie, I see that you're on here, but you're on mute, and I don't know if you.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't have any input other than maybe the paper, inviting the paper to do an article as well for a notification for a front page type thing. So
sort of this is happening, and we are going to be, the port will be letting folks know, look to X, Y, and Z to get updates. Kind of a thing. That's a good idea.
You can advertise there, but you can also encourage them to do a write-up about it. So.
Okay. That's helpful. What else, Aaron, did you need or want to hear from us about?
That's about all I got on that topic right now.
Okay. Then why don't we move on to the electrical upgrades?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been working with our engineer on this one. His design's going pretty well. I think it looks like, so something, a really important thing that I needed to bring up is that as we replace electrical infrastructure from this point forward, when you replace, obviously now we're under new code requirements. One of the biggest changes that we're going to see in marinas in the future is that we're required, and it just got adopted in the Oregon revised statutes for this year. We're required to include ground fault protection in marinas. So basically, what that means is that we have to have a GFI device someplace in our system. It's best for us operationally if we can get that GFI device in the pedestal itself. But what it will, one of the things, so we've gone to a couple of conferences within the last couple of years or so, and this is a thing that a lot of marina operators contend with, and that's that folks will plug into the outlet, and of course, because it's like a 30, is it 13 or 30 milliamps? Kent, do you remember? I think it's 13.
I think it was something real small like that.
It doesn't take much to trip it. That's what the code is set up to do. This is a public safety feature that was enacted because of what they call a lot of electrical drownings. I get these notices all the time of people falling in the water or who are in the water around marinas, and they get electrocuted because there's stray current in the water. Well, they don't get electrocuted. They get it's a combination. Sometimes they get bound up and then they drown or whatever the case is. But anyway, what can happen is if your boat has any kind of electrical issue in it, some kind of ground someplace that you may not be aware of, when you plug into the pedestal, it's going to trip the pedestal. And of course, a lot of people in those, or if your cord's a little bit worn or not the best cord or whatever the case is, it's going to trip the pedestal. It's definitely a challenge that we're going to face in the future. There's a lot of folks, in my experience, that sometimes have troubles with their boat's electrical system someplace that they're unaware of because it works fine. But that spare current does go out in the water at some point in time. It's not good for the ports facilities or boats. So you guys know what it's like when you're next to a hot boat or whatever. Nobody wants that. So it may result in some folks getting a little bit aggravated if they plug in and it trips. But the system is going to be new and the pedestals are going to be new. And so it should be, if it's functioning properly, it should be an issue, not with the pedestal, but someplace in the cord or someplace in the boat. That's something to keep in mind in the future that you may run across. But in any case, we're looking at also changing to a different receptacle, which is a lot safer than the old plug and turn ones. Some of you may have seen these before. The newer cords are orange, and it's called a what are they called again? It's
I don't recall right off the bat, but it's a plug-in where it goes in and it snaps into place, and it doesn't have any twisting or anything, so it can't be affected by wind blowing on your cord or your pedestal. England Marine's starting to carry some of that, and I've talked to several other ports that are starting to install these new receptacles, and everybody seems to be really happy with them. It cuts out a lot of problems that we get on a continual basis by somebody saying, you know, something's wrong with our receptacle, and we go down there and find that either their cord, they just didn't twist it in there enough, or there's some other issue that where you don't stay with a good connection on those twist locks. These things just snap into place and you're done.
Yeah, the improvement on these plugs with the connection between the plug and the receptacle is exponential. There's a great deal less heat, which means that it's better for all the fittings involved. You get a better connection. But that's what we're looking to go to. We're at the point right now where we're just starting to price pedestals out. Looks like I think the ones that look the best right now are probably the Eaton pedestals. One of the features about those that we kind of like is that if there is one that's if the ground fault is tripped on that pedestal, each of them have they've got a small light on the actual pedestal itself that normally is white or yellow under normal conditions, but if the GFI is tripped, it turns it to red. So before you even walk down to the dock, you can see what pedestal, you can see if there's a pedestal that's tripped. And so that's something I think is a benefit. We're gonna have to do a little bit of panel work up on the pier and, you know, feeding down to the docks. But yeah, like I said, we just turned in some load sheets to the PUD yesterday so that we can see if the PUD has to make any upgrades up on the transformer side. But we're looking to, like I said, we're going to 50 amp service, 3-leg 50 amp, and we'll probably, I don't know, we're possibly looking at a couple of other upgrades on the dock for power. So.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Aaron, I know there's a requirement for isolation transformers in vessels in order to not be putting a bunch of electricity into the water. How are we doing on the compliance for that?
You know, so the last time, so this is a tough one to answer because sometimes somebody may have a problem that you're unaware of, but the last time we took a look down on the docks, we were doing pretty good as far as spare current was involved. It's a requirement to have isolation transformers. I'm not aware of anybody who's not in compliance right now, but Kent, you got anything else on that?
I know when the first thing we usually tell them when they start having problems is, you know, first question is, do you have a isolation transformer? And if they don't, normally that will take care of it if they buy them. I know they're really expensive, but that's just protects everything on the boat, and so stuff isn't going back into our power pedestals and feeding back into the water or whatever. And the name of those new plugs are smart plugs, by the way, too. Those are
yeah,
those are the ones that I couldn't think of.
So Mike, that's required by law You have to have that? Is that what you're getting at?
I think it's a port requirement.
A port requirement,
That's
okay.
just a port requirement, so we don't have straight current running back through. And like we heard at the conference, the guy had his young kid electrocuted just swimming out in the water towards the dock. He got within a few feet of it, and there was straight current going into the water, and his kid got electrocuted and died.
Oh God, that's horrible.
And that was something, it was a very compelling presentation that he gave. It just so happens, and I've talked with him, and we could have him come down this summer if folks are interested in this, because I know within the marina world, a lot of people met with this change in the National Electric Code with resistance, and they're like, there's no way we can comply with that, but the whole point is that the reason why they're saying there's no way they can comply with it is because in the back of their mind, they know that there's a lot of boats out there that have issues, that as soon as they put a GFI device in, it's going to start tripping on them. But that's exactly why this requirement is in place, because there are so many boats out there that do have minor ground fault issues that they're unaware of. And I think there's a misconception that because we're in saltwater, it's not as big of an issue for us. And this gentleman who gave this presentation, like I said, unfortunately lost his son, but for whatever reason it happened. He's also an electrical engineer, so he has a very intimate knowledge of exactly what causes these conditions. And he put on a couple of lab demonstrations for us that showed that, at times like right now, like everybody knows that the salinity is salt goes down deep, right? So he was able to demonstrate to us that at times like right now, when there's a lot of runoff and it's raining heavily, that there's a couple of feet of fresh water, basically, as far as electricity is concerned. There's a couple of feet of fresh water on top, and that's exactly where people float. And it's definitely enough that if a boat has a minor problem, that somebody could die from it. So
Are you finding that there's a lot of boats that don't comply, or like, I guess, so Mike's question was, is it being enforced? And do we need to do some kind of educational outreach, maybe through the Newport Fishermen's Wives or some other way, to make sure that people are aware of it? Or is this just, I guess
I think so. It's a challenge. It's a challenge right now to find. Some folks would argue it's really easy, but it is a challenge trying to find boats that have problems. The best thing that we can do is get this upgrade done with GFI in the pedestals themselves. We have a requirement to have isolation transformers. I understand that there are definitely ways to hook up isolation transformers incorrectly so that it is actually doing the wrong thing and it's sending current out of your boat. And I think that is, just checking for an isolation transformer basically doesn't ensure that it's wired up properly, that everything's working properly. It's a challenge to enforce it. And I think the best thing we can do would be to, get this upgrade done. And then also, like you said, we, over the course of the summer, maybe do some outreach about the dangers that are involved with ground fault in marinas and around the water. So.
okay. Anybody have questions or comments for Aaron on that? Kind of getting off easy today, Aaron. No, good job, good explanations. And when you do the outreach, I'd be happy to work with you to help get that information distributed. And then the next thing on the agenda is planning for Port Dock 7 replacement.
So the in our budget this year, we still have room for the idea was to do some planning. I think we're still searching for funding for that. That's the status on that would probably be more a Paula question. But aside from that, the first thing that needs to happen before we can get Port Dock 7 to be a modern facility that is highly useful for modern vessels is that we need to get this channel dredged in there. And I just got an email from the Army Corps yesterday, and our project our project's been approved for a feasibility study. to get that done, so I made this request on continuing the continued authorities program, which is in section 107 of the, I can't remember which federal act it is, but anyway, it's a cap section 107 request. And through the Army Corps, what this allows them to do is to use basically discretionary funds to do navigation improvements for safety and to increase the navigation, the navigability of federal waters or state waters, whatever. It just needs to rise to the level of federal interest. Our project request definitely rises to the level of federal interest. The interest determination has cleared their the next level of scrutiny, and they're scoping the feasibility study right now. The purpose of the feasibility study is basically the same thing that would happen to get a nationwide permit, or more or less the same thing. So basically what we're talking about is they're going to be working on getting the appropriate federal authorization to go ahead and dredge a minus 20-foot channel that will go into all the way down to the end of Port Dock 7 and into the hoist dock. That way all the big boats can actually have access to that end of the marina. And then the next step will be for us to find funding and to get the permits to get it dredged and get new docks put in that are sizable enough that'll actually fit modern fishing vessels. And I think that between this project getting rising to, they've definitely determined that it rises to the level of federal interest. We already got that grant for Port Dock 5 pier. The EDA is interested in continuing to invest in areas where they've already made an investment, such as the Port Dock 5 pier. They want to continue investing further money, because they don't want it to just wither away. These things demonstrate that the federal government does recognize that work in the commercial marina is important enough to the regional economy that it is a federal issue. And so that bodes well for us in the future as far as funding for projects goes. And I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get done what we need to get this dock rebuilt, because basically the point that I've been able to make to most people that I've talked to is that it was it was originally a recreational facility that grew into a commercial facility that was kind of configured for boats around the 45-foot or 40-foot range. And that is not necessarily what we're seeing as far as the trend goes here for the future, that people that want to use our facility.
So I can add to that as far as the grant and funding goes for the planning. Well, there are several steps basically when you try to do a major replacement like we're intending to do here for Dock 7. And usually you're not going to get millions of dollars from normally would be from a federal agency without a plan. It's pretty much a given. So in order to get through that process, we got to go and try to find some grants to do the project plan in order to have something to present. And that plan would include anything from economic impact analysis, engineering, and general feasibility to do the project, right? Right now we actually working with the grant writer. Our grant consultant should give me a little bit more update next week of where we are within the process. It's a little tricky when it comes to commercial marinas because, there are a lot of agencies out there that usually work with ports and different kind of grants. One of them is the Maritime Administration. And unfortunately, I had long conversations with a representative from MARAD up in Seattle, and they have a tendency to really focus on cargo, often getting a fishing marina, it's a bit more difficult because somehow we still haven't been able to get that seafood moved into the cargo business that they usually account for, because often they're looking into how much cargo do you receive and how much money should we invest. However, there are other agencies such as USDA and EDA, and as Aaron has indicated, EDA, most federal agency, quite frankly, they really like to continue investing in an area where they started. They usually, you cannot use another federal grant as a match for a federal grant, but you can continue the work, as we, if we find something going on in a particular area, if we can develop something. And the fact that the Army Corps it's kind of invested into this area with this Section 107 and looking seriously into this dredging, it's really going to help our case, because first of all, they have already done some sort of economic impact analysis, which it looked pretty good. I look at a draft of it, and that really is going to help our case. And that's one of the reasons they're continuing to look into doing this feasibility study. And we're pretty sure we're gonna get that. We still don't have the document in front of us for signature, but we pretty much got a good indication that it most likely it's coming. Once we have that, I think it will really help our case to, again, move forward with a grant for the plan. And we have put aside this year for the plan, as well as for the feasibility study, which isn't cheap. This is going to come around about $900,000, in which the port will match 50%. Should we move forward with a dredging plan, so we'll do that this year, and then the Army Corps eventually will put in, I believe, is at 90%, right, Aaron?
Yeah, our fund match for the actual dredging is only 10%.
Yeah, and that is going to be the big bucket, of money that it's going to need to get this work done. It's going to be close somewhere around $3 million or so. So at that point, as we move forward with that project, I really think the federal government is going to have more interest in showing and seeing that we continue doing more work in the area. And it, again, that draft economic impact analysis does show the need for the functionality of this whole commercial marina as to the economic impact on this area because of the fishermen and all. So we will continue working on that. This isn't like something, oh yeah, we will get this done tomorrow. I know Kent would love to get this done by the time he retires, but it's just not gonna happen. He's just gonna have to come back and cut the ribbon eventually. But anyway, the intent again is if we can still get this grant this year to start on the planning, we'll move forward with that. And then we don't know how long will be once we have a plan, how long will be until we get another grant, because that will be the big grant, to actually build this. This is going to be millions of dollars. And that study or that plan will also looking into the financials as well, how much it will cost to rebuild this this Dock 7. So we are continue working into it. We are not dropping the ball here, but it is a long process, and we'll keep giving you update as we have them. And we certainly understand the need of this upgrade, and how we would eventually beneficially impact this entire marina.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Paula, and really appreciate the work that the port staff has done since you've been on board to really go after these grants and make positive things happen for all the commercial and recreational fleets in Newport. It's really critical. along those lines, I just have a couple of comments, and I know you've seen the draft report that the Lincoln County and MTC sponsored a couple years ago as an update that's being updated right now to include information through 2020, and that should be finalized in the next couple of weeks. And that will be something that MTC will be broadcasting, but also you can use it for those grant opportunities. I just became aware that MTC received a $15,000 grant from Lincoln County to formalize this report in a way that makes it usable to anybody who wants to use it, and to figure out a way to continuously update it. So literally just saw that the county commission had agreed to do that. It looks like the Port of Newport also got $13,000 for the rogue seawall.
Oh, good, because
Yeah.
I've been wondering about that. I haven't gotten any notification yet.
I haven't either. I was like, oh shoot, I wonder what's happening with that. And they met on the 4th, and it lists out that you will be receiving an agreement letter.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, authorized as follows. So if you go to the Lincoln County website and look at the minutes from the 4th, it's on there. My other comment is partnerships as you move forward with granting. In a lot of cases, we in the industry can partner if it's helpful. I certainly am assuming that you're working with the Port of Toledo. You know, in a lot of cases, and even Yaquina Boat Works, people are coming to Newport who maybe wouldn't usually be here to go up and use the shipyards. Newport's is the one-stop shop. And so I see a lot of benefit in strong partnerships with Port of Toledo, with the fishing industry, with fishermen's wives, especially if you tie in safety. There's a lot that could be done there to make grant applications stronger and just be able to show broad support. And I know Aaron and you worked hard on that for the Port Doc 5 EDA grant, going after the support letters and whatnot. Continue to do that, and don't hesitate to ask us to be able to partner and bring in the right people to help make those things happen. And then the last comment I would make is that newly elected Dick Anderson from Lincoln City, I spent an hour with him recently on a Zoom. He has a lot to learn about fisheries, he admits, but understands the critical importance of fisheries to this district, and he's really anxious, I believe, to help be a leader there. And so that's welcome news as well, because as much as I liked Arnie Roblin, he was located down in Coos Bay and just had a different agenda. And so I think Dick is real interested in helping the port and the fishing industry stay viable. So those are just some of the comments and thoughts that I have.
No, absolutely. I think it's very important to have partnerships, and as soon as we identify the right grants to apply, by any means, we will be sending probably templates and also asking if you guys want to write your own, but we'll be asking for support letters. And I agree. I did meet with Dick Anderson as well, and he certainly showed a lot of interest for ports. I think I agree with you. Having him here in Lincoln County and understanding the ports in this area, I think will be a great benefit to us. And he certainly welcome, us calling him and asking for whatever needed to get this moving. So that is wonderful to have that. So again, we will continue including you guys as we move forward. It's just that it's a long process, and you, as you may wonder, you know, why you haven't gotten a call asking for a support letter yet is because we're still trying to identify the right, you know, as there's so many grants out there, not all, you know, there are very few that fits, you know, to the right bucket. And that's kind of, we want to make sure we are successful, therefore we pick the right stuff. So
does anybody else have questions or comments on the Port Doc 7 process?
I do have a comment, Heather.
Okay, David, and then Mike.
First off, I'm glad to hear that COE is starting a feasibility study on the dredging through there. But the response from MARAD on financing through MARAD is kind of a sad deal, because all the other federal agencies, COE, you know, a long time, 7 years ago, changed their dredge metrics to start encompassing small harbors that just support commercial fishing and recreation, because they've realized what economic impact that has on their states, federal, and the communities that are involved with those small communities. And so it is kind of sad to see that MARAD's still hung up on their cargo shipping, where they've actually found in studies that cargo does not bring the economics into the smaller communities or into the bigger communities that has shipping, that it all filters out. But at least so far, COE has accepted that and have changed their dredge metrics over the years. But it would be nice just to keep leaning on MARAD, because I think that eventually they're going to have to change. It's a change that happens on the East Coast, but it's going to come towards us, I feel. And like on the Port Doc 7, you know, I think we've all emphasized over the years strongly that that is just so important to this community and for our industry and recreational and everything to continue to grow. And the port's done a tremendous job on pushing that forward. But as industry, we need to continue to support you and helping you push that forward in any way we can. And Heather's been a good conduit through that, and doing the economic studies and bringing that out. So anything we could do in helping you forward on that, it just shows how important it is to us. So that's all I have.
And just a quick answer to the MARAD comment. I agree with you. And in my conversations with them, it's not that they don't support commercial fishing. It's just that the type of grants they have available at the moment are more focused on you know, again, on cargo, and actually they have some good grants for shipyards too. I mean, Port of Toledo got some good grants from them. But that, what I was trying to discuss with Bruce up in Seattle is that, hey, you know, here you have the shipyard, but the shipyard really depends on us, you know, because that's what, so it kind of runs together. So you really have to, you guys gotta be not so closed up and focus on one thing. You gotta see what is beyond that, because again, the Port of Toledo depends on the Port of Newport, and great part to the business that come in there. And so if you're providing a grant to them, well how about what goes on over here? So anyway, we are continuing. He was actually very open-minded, very friendly about continue looking into, you know, the type of funds that come to them and see what we can get. But I will absolutely keep pushing that. It's very important, and they should be a good partner to us, and not just so focused on plainly in cargo.
Mike?
Yeah. Last meeting, I was talking a little bit about the overcrowding that we're going to be experiencing from time to time on, this is Dock 5, but it also affects Dock 7, because as we re-strike the parking lot over at Dock 7, we're basically putting in larger stalls for bigger boats. But right now, if you were to walk down Dock 5, you'd see that every stall, every side tie is being used. We have a large influx of out-of-town boats, with more coming from Astoria. Reportedly, there's going to be a dozen boats from Astoria in the 60-plus size range. they're going to be coming down here to fish Dungeness crab due to domoic acid issues up in their area. And if you look right now, all of Dock 5 is utilized, and there are numerous boats already tied to fish plants up and down. I'm really concerned about what's going to happen when these additional dozen boats show up. And, you know, those of us that have paid and have held annual moorage at the port here for years and years and years are going to come to town and find absolutely nowhere to park. So when we're configuring Dock 7 again, we should maybe look at it and say, would a expansion, albeit temporary, like this be, would Dock 7 be able to handle that in what we're proposing? Or I said it last meeting, and it may be a pie in the sky thing, or is there any possibility of that seawall being a little bit further out so that when we reline the parking lot, we're relining a larger parking lot instead of the same size parking lot? I think we're coming up to some real problems when this crab fishery starts happening. I think we're coming up against some real problems. If we have an additional dozen boats actually show up here, you come to town when it's blowing 50, 60, and there's nowhere to park. Paul is quoted or registered as saying, relative to the squid fishery, there were concerns, and she made the statement that nobody could tie outside of somebody without either the okay from the boat himself or the port. Well, if you come to town and there's nowhere to tie, and the people on the, you see a boat that you can tie outside of, and they're not there. I mean, if we can't tie on somebody without somebody's permission, and is the port ready to give permission for you to tie outside of somebody and then have 50, 60, 70 knots of wind come and rip everybody loose because you're tied outside of them, and the havoc that could take place? I mean, I think we're coming up on a real tough time here. And I think, Paul made the statement that we had to demonstrate the need to grow before getting funding. So by way of demonstrating that, I think maybe if you hired somebody with a drone camera right now to fly over our port and take a look at how people are tied outside of fish plants because there's nowhere to tie at Dock 5, and I think it would be a good opportunity. And if these 12 boats come, it might even be a better opportunity to demonstrate how overcrowded we are and how serious the need is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I completely agree with you, and I understand your frustration and how, this is a very busy marina. There's no doubt about it. And Aaron and I have had long conversations about that and how we can address, first of all, the situation and how people just come in and don't even ask others if they can. Or one part of it is we have to have the staff to coordinate that, and we don't quite have that. And it is something we're looking into in the future. And like I said, Aaron and I already talked about that. And I think at one point, we should have some staff to do that coordination. And as people, because a lot of marinas out there, as people come in, they need to notify, I'm coming, do you have a place for me? And we don't quite have that. So it is a tricky situation, and where we are trying to find, it's something that is not just resolved from night to day, it will take time. However, part of redoing Port Dock 7 is exactly, trying to address part of that too. And as you're saying, you gotta identify all the reasons why we need to address this and address the need of growing the marina. And all of that will be part of this this plan that we're trying to put together. We will get professionals that will look into that feasibility of rebuilding this marina, and all of that is going to have to be addressed, because as of today, it is a problem at Port Dock 7, is a problem at Port Dock 5. And it's a problem at the terminal as well, you know. So, but yes, I understand your concern, and we most definitely understand that it needs to be addressed, and we haven't 100% put it aside. We just don't have right now the staff to fully address it. But as planning forward, we actually are looking into what we can do to address the problem. So
is there ever a situation where right now someone would come in and not have a place to tie? Like, what would happen? What would they do if it was a massive storm? And or what would happen if we have all these people side tied or boats that are too big to be in those places and the storm comes through? I mean, we've seen in the past some pretty destructive results from that.
Well, we actually had that issue. And Aaron, remind me what we did, and or maybe Kent, in a situation like that.
That's why side tying is so important. I mean, it's important in that it'll give somebody a space to tie. However, it places a lot of stress on our aging facilities when you do that, because you're doubling up the side loading on the pilings, or maybe even tripling it, whatever the case. And I think one of the things that Mike's talking about here is, we could have the perfect plan in the world, we could have all the staff that we need in the world, but I think what the future seems to be bringing to us is the fact that we are still going to be at max capacity, and we're still going to have more boats that are going to come in. And I honestly don't think that funding is the biggest challenge with this stuff. I think it's permitting, because when you're talking about projects like moving the breakwater or moving, growing capacity in the marina, it's tough. And it's because there's a lot of people out there that really are highly concerned about the impacts that those kind of projects have on the ecosystem and maintaining the health of the fisheries that everybody's engaged in, things like that. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've got here is permitting for all this stuff. Just the Port Dock 7, it just about made my head spin as quickly as the Army Corps just ate up this request to go ahead and dredge this channel, because it's not that hard to demonstrate how important this is to the local economy. It's not that hard to get that point home to people. They were really quick to say, yes, let's do this. The challenge is going to be, though, it's going to be in the environmental impact analysis and the mitigation efforts that have to come out of it and things like that. And so some of it is regulatory, is what I'm saying. And if there's some work that could be done, the more allies that we can have in the realm of affecting permitting processes and things like that, I think those are definitely things that will help us get to the point where we can get the marina sized right, so that we don't have boats that are tied 3 deep on floating docks that, even a brand new floating dock, if you got that many big boats tied, couple wide, especially where the way we are close to the bar. I mean, it's not like Coos Bay where the marina's around the corner and a lot of the wave action kind of bypasses it. I mean, that's why we got that breakwater built out there, that rock pile added on, was because like you remember, the whole, what was it? Was it Port Dock 3 that let loose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was because the wave action was coming. You guys have been here longer than I have, but you know what it used to do to the docks. So,
waves on 5A.
Yeah, and those present real challenges for us. But in the future, if we want to meet those challenges and change the capacity of this marina, it's going to take some major engineering efforts, and it's the permitting that I don't know how to. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
no,
I would just add, if I could, around the permitting. You talked about regulatory, and you're right, but it's also political. And so I would just encourage you all not to hesitate to reach out to us for help in connecting the industry directly with the people at NIPS or ODFW who are making these decisions. Conservation is a big part of their charge. It's probably the primary part, but economic development is also in there, even though they don't always highlight it. Those agencies are, required to also consider economic development, and so I just think that there are ways. Just don't go it alone. Try, even if we can't help, then we'll tell you, but at least bring us in if you think we can. Sometimes it just takes a phone call or people reaching out or a real effort to get a bunch of people to sign something or whatever, because these are really important, not just for economic development, but for safety. And people want to come to the Port of Newport. And whether it's it's something that's a result of domoic acid up north, whether it's squid offshore, whether it's people coming to take advantage of the shipyards, people want to come here. And so we need to plan for those expansions, and let us help you if we can, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I'd also like to throw out that years ago, the Bolt decision in Washington caused a shift of quite a few salmon trawlers down into the Oregon area. And the current issue that the fleet is looking at now is that California's access to crab fishing has been threatened greatly by whale entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are looking at their opportunity to fish being in serious jeopardy. And many of those people have Oregon crab permits that they haven't been using. And those people very well may relocate to somewhere where the opportunity to fish is much more guaranteed than it is where they live now. And, so I encourage you as we dream about new facilities to dream big, because it would be a shame to build a new Port Dock 7 and still be overwhelmed.
One thing I thought of too is if you could talk to the Corps of Engineers and figure out what the slope for a 20-foot deep draft would be further to the south without impacting the current breakwater out there. Maybe we could move that further to the south, so you could even add on another maybe 50 to 100 feet of all those docks that I drew up on the tentative Dock 7 rebuild.
Well, I might add that I agree with Aaron that, I've been working with ports now for 18, 19 years. And in permitting, and it's not just for this port, it's ports in general. Permitting anything in the water, it's always the challenge, and it's not getting any better. You think that people running out of space and maybe they will be more linear about it, but it's actually the opposite. It's just getting harder and harder. I don't foresee, not that we won't dream big, not that we won't stop trying, but I don't foresee an increase beyond the breakwater, for the time being. And if we're looking to doing that beyond and move that breakwater, I would say it will take years and years before we can do that. So what I don't want to do is rely on that for the replacement of Port Dock 7, because we do have to plan with what we have, because any movement of that kind, it will take years and years and years of permitting, not even finding funds, but permitting. And that by itself can delay everything, and we don't want to do that. But certainly, once we go beyond that and we really have no space to grow, that's typically when you can make your case, because that's how especially the permitting authorities look at things. It's like, do you really have room to grow? You still do, well, then too bad. And considering Newport doesn't really have many land space for growth, for economic growth, because everything is in hills over here. It's very little space. So a good part of our economic development, it's really in the water. And it's certainly something we're going to have to continue looking at it. So it doesn't stop there. But all I'm saying is, uh, don't expect that be part of what we're trying to accomplish right now, because that would really slow down the process.
One other thing to consider, and Mike made me think about this too, is thinking outside the box in terms of climate impacts. A lot of fisheries are actually moving as well. We're seeing this more in the North Pacific right now. Although I would say over the last couple of years, like with squid and other things, we have seen fish showing up in places it hasn't been before. There may be some opportunities somehow linked, because there's huge buzzwords around, the blue economy, the Blue New Deal, finding ways to take advantage of opportunities, not just be reactive. There could be some niche opportunities, I guess, is what I'm thinking. I could make the case for vessels moving to follow fish that may be coming further north or coming south, and just thinking outside the box, something to think about as we move forward.
Yeah, Heather, as far as the messaging goes, there's a slide because I had to go up and give a presentation to all the permitting agencies about our ideas with Port Dock 7 to just kind of get the idea out there some months back. And one of the things I was really concerned about is that a lot of people are like, they equate climate change to catastrophically bad events, and they don't understand it. It's simply a change. And what I try to do to get these folks to realize that an investment in the infrastructure here in Newport is definitely a good move was I took a picture from I don't know, early 1900s. There was a fisherman holding, he had a halibut and he had some other fish that was there. And I used the visual to demonstrate to them that an investment in these infrastructure projects is really an investment in the resourcefulness of fishermen and the way that they change. And then I highlighted a few species that they weren't even fishing for back then, and talked about hake and a couple of other things that have grown. I mean, the Dungeness crab fishery really boomed and grew, and a couple of others I can't remember off the top of my head. And then I highlighted a couple of fisheries that had kind of tailed off, so that they could understand that as the climate may change and as the fishing conditions may change, the fisheries are still going to be there, although they might be in a different fishery. The fisheries and the fishing industry will still be there, and I think that's something that folks have got to understand. Otherwise, they're prone to just say, "Oh, well, the fish aren't going to be there." So that, and it's not an informed opinion, but it's something I think we got to be aware of.
That's a good point. David, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to cover a couple things. And, one of our big issues, like in the Yaquina estuary, is that it's documented as a fully developed estuary, meaning that, we're out of mitigation. We're out of a lot of areas. And Paula brought that up on, well, how much land do we have? How much room do we have? We do have some acreage left, 60 some acres of industrial land, but it's our mitigation issues that really causes our problems. And when they stopped allowing off-site mitigation where we could use mitigation in other ports and other areas, that kind of hurt things. But, when you're talking about moving breakwaters or doing anything with breakwater, I know I was involved with that breakwater when it was replaced. And I think 7 years of the time was just spent on permitting and design, just to get to the point of even before replacing the old breakwater. Breakwaters are designed just like groins and spur jetties. They're designed to enforce dredging by natural cause. So they're designed to use the force of the tides to dredge. And so that's what they're designed for. So any change, it's really elaborate what they have to go through all the tidal studies and everything else to say, okay, well, if we change the breakwater to this scenario, your flushing of your tidal current is going to change, so you're going to impact something else. And we ran into that over there at NOAA. Even no matter how many engineers we had working on the landscape plan for the estuary through the NOAA dock, it failed on us. So those are things that really takes a long, long time to do a study on when you go and look at those movements. That's it.
Thanks, David. Other questions or comments on the Port Dock 7 or anything else that we've talked about?
You know, Heather, I'm sorry. There was one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't get a chance to bring up earlier. Waste oil disposal in the commercial marina. We had we had two tanks previously, 2,000 gallons apiece, right, Kent, was what their capacity was?
5,000 gallons each.
5,000, I'm sorry. So two 5,000 gallon tanks. We had a failure in one of them. So we're down to one tank now, which means we have to get more frequent pickups, which means it's more expensive for us. I think we're probably going to wind up this coming fiscal year having to raise the rates a little bit on disposal of waste, bilge waste. Because of that, we're going to need it. Really, the long-term future for us should be a centrifuge, probably, so that we can more. It's actually less expensively dispose of bilge waste. I did a bunch of work to try and figure out what type of device was going to work best for us, whether it was a centrifuge or there's a couple others that I looked at. But in any case, it's something I wanted to let everybody know of. I don't think that our rates are going to go up past what the Port of Toledo charges or anything like that. But I think we're going to have to do something because it's tough for us to get rid of bilge waste right now.
And let me just add to that, and the intent here, it's not for the port to make money. Just so you understand, this is a service we provide for the fishermen. And our intent is just to being able to continue providing that service. So again, we'll raise that in order to replace, and we've been lucky because we've been able to use what we had, and then therefore the prices were way down here. But as you may look throughout, other marinas and ports charge way more, and we don't intend to start charging way more just to make money. Our intent is to just increase it to, again, being able to continue providing that service by replacing what we have.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? The agenda has future considerations. I'm not sure what that means. Is there some additional stuff coming in front of the commission that Jim or you guys are going to want some feedback on specifically? Or is that just when are we going to get together again type thing?
I would say everything.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just a spot to add anything that might be coming. I think things like the oil were already mentioned. That's a future consideration, but it's just a placeholder.
Okay. Is there any issue, Karen, with the fact that we don't have a quorum to update the minutes at this point? We just carry them on till the next time we have a quorum. There's no urgency to get that done anytime sooner.
No, I do have draft minutes posted. They're just not formalized and they're there.
So I think we're going to wrap up then for today. I think what I'm going to do and would encourage others to do as well is direct fishermen and other users of the port to look at the video of the meeting, provide feedback directly to you, Aaron, if people have ideas or questions or comments. And that way people are aware of what's going on. And then as you move forward towards that February 25th date, if you can keep us posted or keep me posted so I can disseminate that this is going to be working and look for updates wherever we're going to have them posted. That would be helpful. And if you think that you need some additional help in getting the extension approved, please don't hesitate to reach out on that and see if we can provide any assistance there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and unless anybody has any other comments or questions, I think we'll go ahead, Paula.
The only thing I want to add is the reason we have Angela attending our meeting today. She's our PR person, and it's just so she can understand, again, your needs as far as notifications and getting the story out there accordingly. So we'll work with Angela in making sure that, that there's enough exposure so everybody knows what's going on a regular basis. So
Sounds good. With that, then it's 10:42, and I would like to adjourn the meeting so we can all get on to other stuff.